Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the FRG. Couple of normal announcements. The induction loop is now operative. Is that correct? Must be. Nobody speaks. Members and officers, please remember to switch microphones on and speak directly into the microphone and switch off again after speaking. Reporting officers using Teams, please switch cameras on when addressing the committee and switch off again after speaking. Please use the hands up to icons to indicate questions and comments. The chair will invite you to speak. The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public, and a recording of the meeting will be available on the council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. Any exempt, i.e. private items on the agenda, the live stream will cease prior to the meeting moving into private. There might be a short delay. All right, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Skipplehorn, who's been substituted by Councillor Mead, and Councillor Wynne, who is substituted by Councillor Pedersen.
Thank you very much. Minutes. I presume everybody who was here then has looked at them. And can I say that they're an accurate copy? Thank you very much. Disclosure of interests. If anything does come up which you think you may have a personal interest or a pecuniary interest, please inform the chair. Section 106 of the Local Government Act. Many members are so affected with this, again, inform the chair. Urgent business, Matt?
None, Chair.
Sorry. References from committees and other bodies?
None, Chair.
Chair's announcements, nothing at the moment. We come to reports, and I believe it's Deb doing a finance update. Thank you, Deb.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, members. So you've got a report attached, which is the Q2. So I will take the Q2 first, if that's okay, because that will be part of the finance update. On agenda item. Yeah, so agenda item number 10, Chair. Yeah, so that's the finance update. So I'll take the agenda item 10. Yeah, because the same thing, it's when I don't have a quarterly report, then I give a monthly finance update. So, and then I will come on tax base. So this is, apologies, there was a first report came and second we just changed the table, but the bottom line figure didn't change. So we gave a detailed explanation between the first and the second report. So as at the this is the Q2, which is end of September. And this is the forecast. So what we predict end of September, what the forecast is going to be for the end of the year. And if you look at the paragraph 1, first Roman letter, there's a net forecast of spending general fund of 7.8. So I can come back to the recommendation, but I would like to take you through the report. I see the first, I would like to refer to the page 10/4, where there's a table. So that's in your second pack. So is everybody else on that page? It's 10/4. Yeah. There's a table on top, says variations reported. Yeah. Okay, good. So if you look at the approved budget and the total variation on the right-hand side, so there is a 10.4, and that's the change which we did because we had price inflation and coronavirus, but we've got budget set aside as when the budget was approved in February for inflation and COVID reserves. So we've applied those COVID reserves. So this is net of those COVID reserves because price and coronavirus impact was sort of at that point was considered inflation will come down and coronavirus impact will get out of the system. But we've still got 2 million, you will see later, which we can still apply if there's other further price inflation or coronavirus impact. And then you've got the department there, you've got the chief exec 1.6, so I will go into detail, and children 1.4, inclusive economy, that's where there's a biggest impact 5.3, and then population well-being 2 million. Now the other one-off in terms of the increases and decreases, but the big one you will see employee pay award 3.8. So that was not budgeted because at that time when we are using the assumptions, we had a 2% that was sort of based on what was Office of Budget Responsibilities forecast of inflation. So this is an additional cost which was not budgeted for, but then Q1, we've decided to release a contingency because those things like pay award will still be, it's at 6%, it has already been agreed. So that's why we decided to release, otherwise we don't release a general contingency until at the end of the year. So that you will see 2.5 as a negative. And then there are upside and downside in terms of borrowing costs. So when later I will take you through the capital program, you will see there's a significant amount of capital projects have been reprofiled. So that brings an upside. But at the same time, when we don't lend the airport, then there's a downside in terms of interest. So you will see give and take some of the interest and some of the borrowing costs net itself out. And then you will see on other specific reserve, there's a 2.8 that I will take you through. This is an upside on the pension because we had the actual valuation, but I will take you through pension. So that from a high level sort of summary in terms of the table, bring us a bottom line figure of 7.8, and that's the forecast. So if I take you through, so inflation, pay, and coronavirus impact is on forecast is 800,000 inflation and 1.8 coronavirus impact. This may go up when we do Q3, so we don't know what the eventually, but that's what has been reported by department. There's still a shortfall in the savings delivery program, which is on your page 10/5 on top of 1.3, but this as well we are monitoring and we'll keep on a close eye on the delivery of savings. Now, turning back to the departmental positions, I think you will see there's a theme throughout those departmental variations, and I would like to point out is income shortfall, and mainly as a result of the pandemic. So the pandemic is still having an impact. So you will see some of the parking or licensing has not reached the pre-pandemic level. So one of the things I will point out when I'm going across. So the three main area you will see in chief exec is one is shortfall of recovery fees, and there is 257. There's billing and recovery again, 575, and there's adult social care financial assessment 250. Those three key items are the main variations. And now the latest in terms of recovery plan, and that was because the court was not opening. So although when they're opening, they were not allowing that the same level of number of summons to go through the court. But the latest assurance I have from the department, now we are managing to take more summons through the court, and that income recovery will be that was set in the budget. So we don't expect this to reoccur in 23-24. There has been, if you look at page 10/6, the second bullet point, staff pressures. So there has been the outputs which we couldn't manage to recruit. In fact, even to recruitment using recruitment agency, we struggled to recruit. And then on top of that, we had all these audit and 3 years audit and everything, which I'll give an update where we are later. And those we had to incur additional costs, but hopefully we'll get back to a normal position. And we managed to recruit one more, and we are pushing another recruitment agency to recruit. So those key posts in finance, we are struggling. So we will try our best to fill those posts. Children, families, education, 1.4 million. And this is mainly, you will see on page 10.7 is demand led. So this is, you will see adoption services. You will see increase on residential care placement. You will see now predicting overspend in terms of additional posts, and that was agreed to Ofstet's improvement work. And we expect now Ofstet is out, so we expect those costs to fall out from the system. And then if I take you to the next page, 10/8 is inclusive economy. So I'll spend a bit more time on here because this is quite a few areas where we've got a focus over spend. First one is you will see in the big one, I will go for the significant one, property and infrastructure. So the main one here is in terms of street lighting. So although we are reporting the pressures here, we've already allocated the inflation. So you will see inflation is another theme across the report in terms of the 3 or 4 out of the main one is street lighting services due to increase in gas and electricity. And then the next page, you will see 227 is underspend on construction fare reimbursement. So when we're coming back after pre-pandemic, we were paying quite a lot of the government sort of instruction. But now, because of the level of buses were not affected by pandemic, now we're focusing on underspend, and we expect probably that underspend will carry on in 23-24 as well. Property, there is the main reason of property. You will see there is overspend on preservation house. This we have been reporting as part of Q2, and you will see the next 2 items which are sort of net shortfall of traded. So income and then focus of commercial property stage is related to rent. So those are the big ticket items in property. And then you've got 190, which is gas and electric with corporate state. So 2 themes you will see throughout the report is 1, income, 2nd is inflation. So, and 3rd is the impact of pandemic on the income. So the next bullet point is neighborhood services. And here again, you will see the 3 main bullet point is off-street parking income again shortfall of income. So all these main one are linked with after the COVID and the level of income, even parking has not reached the same level as the pre-pandemic level. So these you will see is quite reported throughout the report. Then page 10/10, sustainable development. That's the main reason for that, and we reported this last quarter as well, is 1.6 million pressure in sand transport. There's a piece of work which is taking place, so there is some external advisors looking at that. So there'll be a report coming to exec, that is the next executive, I think, which will have proposals how we are going to start to address and to adopt to reach a more sort of affordable and sustainable level. And then if I may take members through the next one, population and well-being, 2 million. And that's the main one is overspend on temporary accommodation. That's 2.4. This as well work is taking place, but because of the now potential, we are already probably according to Bank of England in recession, that's area we'll have to closely monitor, because when we go into recession, there might be more pressure into temporary accommodation. The next one, which is at the bottom of the page 10/11, which is adult social care. Adult social care is more or less breaking even. So there's few items overspend and underspend, but more or less the same apply to population health on your next page 10/12. And then departmental central cost is more or less breaking even. I think the next item is, as I've mentioned, about borrowing costs and the shortfall in interest. That is on page 10/12. That of paragraph E. So because of a significant amount of projects have been reprofiled, you will see when I'm going to go for the capital monitoring, then there is a reduction of 3.2, and then that's as a result of there is less debentures which provided to LAL because profiling of their project as well. But at the same time, you will see on paragraph 10/13, the second paragraph, it says a reduction of 3.2 million on investment income. So if you borrow less, we lend less as well. So those are corresponding entries. But there are other projects on the capital program which has been sort of reprofiled. I think on page, at the end of the report, page 10/13, pension fund revaluation. That's if you turn over page 10/14. So we had our actuarial valuation. So it's a triennial, every 3 years. And this time, for a long time, I've seen the pension, rather than being a deficit, there has been upside. So the reduction in the deficit in the pension fund, and that has resulted in an upside. So when I will take you through the budget presentation, that's I know is a paper later, I will spend a little bit more time. So that's reduction in the pension deficit has caused for an upside in our current pension provision. So that's an upside of 3 million. Now, looking forward, there are just some additional sort of points in terms of what you have to keep an eye on, but in the budget presentation, I will take you in much more detail, the impact of inflation, pay award, and everything. So these are two main things about staff pay award and price inflation, what impact it will have on 23-24. But there's much more detailed work we've done, and that will be part of that presentation. And then if I take you on the next page, 10-15, which is paragraph Roman letter 2, the HRA has got an overspend, and that's mainly due to overspend in repairs and maintenance, increased cost of materials. That's partly a significant amount. Part of it is linked with inflation again. Then the schools budget, we've got an underspend of 1.155. There are quite a lot of authorities who's got sort of a special, like in terms of needs, it has got a significant sort of deficit. So some councils are struggling in terms of the high needs block. But for the time being, we've got an underspend of 313. So this is an area we have to keep an eye on, because I'm aware the other council has got quite a big sort of deficit in high needs block. Then if I take members to paragraph 7 on the next page, 10-16, this is a bit the recovery plan. So you will see still we are working on, but some of the things which is quite difficult, especially when we're talking about inflation or reduction in income, shortfall in income, the impact of COVID. So these are the things which is a bit outside of our control, but there are certain sort of measures which took in place. So you will see those will be sort of shown as part of the budget presentation as well. We're looking at in terms of capital spend as well. So even this year, if there are certain capital spend, we can try to freeze those. But those are the actions which we've discussed, and this paragraph gives you a bit progress on those actions. So Chair, if I may then move to the capital program. So the capital program, you will see there is sort of last year, there was an outturn of 176 million, but the Q2 monitoring focused a reduction in spend of 43 million. And the paragraph below explained which areas. So paragraph 11 says which areas in terms of library, in terms of sensible way. So those are the projects from page 10-17 to 10-18 gives you a summary of those projects which have been basically reprofiled. So we haven't sort of removed those projects from the capital program. It has been reprofiled, and reprofiling those projects results in the council borrowing less, and that's, as I explained earlier, is linked with the interest which we've saved as well. And that's take me to the last page, which is 10-13, Chair. It's key risks. So the risk of delivering a balanced budget and the impact on 23-24. We have to keep an eye on the savings delivery program, the cost pressures, the inflation, the price inflation, pay inflation, the development of coronavirus, especially reduced income, you will see parking licensing, and continuous development of the procurement, commissioning, and transformation activity, because these are key, quite backbone in delivering future sustainable saving. So that brings me to the end of this report, Chair, and there are quite some detailed appendices A to C, and quite its Q2, and we spent quite a lot of time in order to get the Q2 as accurate as possible, because these form the basis of the 23-24 budget. Because by the time we are still already working on the Q3, by the time we get Q3, we will have the budget will be sort of presented in January. The first executive report is going. So we try to make Q2 as accurate as possible, because this is a foundation for the 23-24 budget. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Deb, for a very succinct report. And any questions? David?
Yeah, I've got a few, although I have to say quite a lot of the questions that came up in my mind have been answered by the presentation that we're going to receive later. So that should shorten the process a little. On page 10/4, in the grid at the top, General Fund Department, under Airport, you're showing an approved budget of £14,000. Now, I assume that's, I was assuming that it was salaries and on costs for council employed staff who actually work for the airport, but it's a tiny sum. What is it? 14,000.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So when we employ the staff, the cost get recharged to LAL. So that's why it's a net budget. The gross budget, you're absolutely right. The salary cost, and then all these salaries costs get recharged to LAL. So that's why you will see the cost center is cost coming in, absolutely employee cost, and then get recharged to LAL. So that is practically sort of breaking even.
Moving on then, page 10/8, towards the bottom of the page, £158,000 unachievable income from Century Park Access Road. How is it intended that should be?
Which page is that?
At 10/8.
10/8, sorry, apologies.
Almost at the bottom of the page, £158,000 unachievable income from Century Park Access. I was just struggling to understand how you were going to get some income from that project.
Yes, so because LAL, they don't employ staff. So when the work was being carried out on Century Park Access Road, and Councillor Frank, you raised this question, we stopped spending on Century Park Access Road. So that has stopped. But in the budget, there was an income because when the state team provides services on Century Park Access Road, that as well get recharged to LAL. But because the work on Century Park Access Road stopped, at the budget time, there was an income target which was included, but because the work stopped, we can't charge to LAL. That part, we are looking at it, how we have to, because that's an income they weren't going to achieve. So we'll have to look at our cost base as well, which are the cost base we have to reduce.
You know, of course, work stopped on the access road because the council has yet to come up with a business case that actually stands up to examination. Move on 10/9 under property. The first item, 777,000 overspend on Preservation House. The council walked into this deal knowing full well that it was going to have to pay the rent on the house, on the building, unless they could attract a short-term tenant. And there was also some discussion about buying the freehold so that we would no longer have to pay the rent. Where are we on that, please? Or is this going to be a continuing problem, a continuing drain, paying rent to the freehold owners?
Yeah, this is absolutely right. We're looking in terms of 23-24. So we had maybe about a couple of months ago, there was a tenant was interested, and we are getting close to finalizing the agreement. And then lately they've pulled out. So I think it's a bit what is happening in the market in terms of the potential recession. So it's very difficult to secure a tenant. And absolutely right, we're looking at, okay, how are you going to rent it? In terms of if we are going to buy the freehold, that's will incur additional capital costs. So that is additional cost. So if you don't get a tenant, then it's still the rent we are paying on the leasehold might reduce, but then there will be an additional capital cost which you have to service in terms of the MRP and debt. But we are looking at that if there's an option, if it's much sort of may be more cost effective. But the fundamental things is we are trying our best to let that, but so far haven't been successful. I will reflect that in 23-24 budget. So we'll have to be realistic whether, given the current economic climate, whether we will be able to get it in it. So this is a risk which will be in the 23-24 budget.
Thank you. Moving down that shopping list then to item 7, 73,000 overspend on sundry properties, mostly due to a change of a water tank at Memorial Park Lodge. £73,000 for a water tank.
Now, this one, I think I can give you an answer, but I'll have to come back on that. Yeah, I think what happened on this one, because there was some issues with water bills. So, but I will come back to correct if there is anything which, yeah. So I think what happened, there was the the charges in terms of water, I may be wrong on that, Councillor Frank, which there was, we didn't have a meter to charge for that on active Luton, but I may be wrong on that. So I'll rather come back on that. Yeah, if I may. Yeah, thank you.
Yep, thanks very much. Clearly, it's not just for water tank in a house. There must be there must be more to it than that. Yeah. Over the page, then, page 10/10, the final item on this item, this 43,000 additional costs for removal of unauthorised traveller encampments. That's £43,000 more than the budget. How much is the total budget, please?
I don't know offhand, so I will come back on that, Councillor Frank, if that's okay with you. Yeah, the total budget, I will get it.
Yep, if an email would be perfectly acceptable. Thank you. Not too much more, I don't think. That's continuing. Comment. Okay, I think only two more questions, and then when questions are over, Chair, I would like to make a comment or two. Going through the corporate director heads, for the chief executive, for example, £700,000 has been introduced by way of contingent contributions from reserves and contingencies, inclusive economy 1.6 million. There are no figures stated for children and families and population and well-being. I work out that between them it comes to getting on for 2.5 million, but it would be good to know what the individual figures were for those two departments.
Yeah, so that's a fair question. We've done this allocation based on what have been reported. So the reason you will see there's more in terms of chief exec and inclusive economy, because quite a lot of these income, especially parking or summons recovery, are mainly chief exec and inclusive economy. So far, we haven't had any inflation or COVID impact being declared by department on the population and children, but that position may change in Q3. So this is based on what department has been reporting. And as I said, the main income is inclusive economy has got the main income and inflation. This position you will see when I'm going to do the budget presentation 23-24, there's more inflation in those areas, and we'll take you through. But I expect this position to change, and that's what I've said in my presentation, that we had 5 million set aside, 2.5 million for COVID impact, 2.5 million for inflation when the budget was approved. So still we've got 2.6 million because we allocated 2.4, which we are holding if those departments declare more inflationary pressures or COVID-related pressures, then we'll be allocating those in Q3.
I take it that what we're being told here is that as at Q2, there has been no contribution from contingencies or reserves, but you expect that there will be as we go through the year.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Chair. That's the end of my questions. I've got a couple of comments at some suitable time, please.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? I've just got a couple really. Is population and well-being, learning and disability and autism housing, 2.5 million removed. Is this going to affect the people who use these services?
Sorry, Chair, which page are you referring to?
Third one down.
1018. On the capital, no, we are not. It's just being reprofiled, platform improvement to private sector, delays caused by COVID legacy limitation of accessing properties. So we're not completely removing the funding. It's just we are reprofiling it, so will be spent in 23-24.
Thank you very much. You mentioned once or twice agency staff. Is agency staff a significant factor in the budget through the various departments? It appears to be.
Answer is yes, Chair. We have noticed there has been an increase in number of agency staff. And I think this is a reflection of not just in local government, but in private sector, there is a significant shortage of staff. And in fact, there has been a report issued by IFS. There has been quite of economic inactivity of people after the pandemic. So about 50 people, some are retiring early. So yes, we have experienced and noticed an increase in the agency spend. And as I said, if you look in finance as well, there's 2 posts have been struggling over the last 2 years to recruit. Some have offered, and then after 1 week, they just turn down the offer. In fact, I've put a market supplement as well. Still, we are struggling. So we have to look at that long term. We try to grow our own. We have a lot of jobs we've promoted within the finance team. But when I use that finance as an example, and I've mentioned even in last quarter, there is a shortage of key technical staff, and we're experiencing in social care as well. So yes, the cost has gone up. In fact, the CLT and Robin are looking at the number of staff for total agencies, so we're trying to address those. But yes, there is areas within the budget which is additional agency costs. And the way to manage that, you will see in the report, which says some of the things, if we can hold some posts vacant. So we are trying to hold, if possible, and those vacant posts is trying to compensate from this, some of the additional spend on the agency. But it is a challenge, and it has gone up. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dev. Have you got any comments, David?
Yeah, a couple of things that I think really need to be drawn out here. And as usual, they relate to the budgeting process and the way the thing is put together. And to be quite honest, I think it's unfair for an officer, however senior, to be answering to these situations. It's a job for the executive member to deal with, to be quite honest. The first thing I would say is the budgeted overspend of 7.8 million is in fact 15.5 million. And that's because you need to add in the contributions from reserves and from contingency, which if they weren't there, the overspend would have been that much bigger. That comes to 4.5 million. And then there's the pension fund reserve, which apparently is no longer required because of a revaluation of the assets, 3 million. Well, add all that onto your 7.8 and you actually get 15.5 million. So that's the true nature of the overspend. And I think we need to look at some of the reasons why the overspend is so large. And a good deal of it is to do with unrealistic budgeting last year in the first place. I mean, the first and obvious one that sticks out is who on earth could realistically have expected salary increases across the council's employees to come to 2%. And that's how much was put in the budget. A dereliction of duty, I would say, for people who voted for 2% increase in staff salaries to go in the budget, knowing they must have known that the figure was going to be higher than that. And we now know, of course, that it amounts to about 6% overall, although it's a bit difficult to calculate because of the flat rate increases that are coming in some cases. But that adds £4 million to the overspend on its own. There are over £250,000 of failure to recover aged debt. Well, we all know that aged debt is very difficult to recover, particularly since in a lot of cases, the people who owe the money have moved away or in some cases died. and recovery is extremely difficult. So I congratulate the members of staff who actually do manage to achieve some, but to overestimate the recovery by £250,000, again, that was an error in putting the budget together last year. What's the other one I've got? Oh yes, the actuary costs, which I guess again comes back to the pension fund. Surely to goodness we've got some idea how much the actuary charges for doing this very complicated job. But to underestimate that by nearly £500,000, I just don't understand how people can put budgets together with such unrealistic estimates in them. It really isn't acceptable, to be honest. And yet it's why we've ended up with a £15.5 million overspent in the budget. I don't know what more I can say.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether Dev or anybody listening in would like to make a comment. Okay. Mohammed?
Just say that I think living in the real world, and I mean real world, nobody expected the inflation to go to 11%. And nobody expected the interest rate in a very short period of time would go triple what they started off. And those are one of the factors that you can't really budget for. Within 45 days of one prime minister, the things went immediately, for every one of us that didn't expect that these things will change so quickly. So what happened nationally has an impact on your budget. So in terms of the wages, yes, the wages have to, because of the inflation, and that is the reason why they have gone to. It is not, in my opinion, the elective duty, but it is more to do with where these things happen unexpectedly during the year. So I think, to ask the officers that they really hadn't, put the proper budget, I think that would be really is because these unexpected things were not, supposed to be that you can budget for. And then lastly, I would say that, increase in needs, even if you were to look at the special needs budget, that's gone up. The demand has gone up by 40%. Now, that is really was not, expected in a very short period of time. From my experience, at best it had gone was about 15 to 20%, but never double that figure. Also, in terms of the children's coming into to the local authority care. Now, even one child coming into care could cost you £250,000. So 3 or 4 children could really make the children's services budget to go up by at least 15 to 20%, overspent. So I think officers can, they do put contingency. You have to do the contingency in children's services because even in adult care, that there will be an extenuating circumstances where you have to use these monies. So these are something that you can't really predict what is around the corner in terms of these. These are statutory services, and those statutory services you have to do. You don't have a choice. So I would give the officers in finance as well as the other part of the council working very hard, despite the cuts in resources nationally. Children's services alone is £1.4 billion nationally, overspent in every local authority up and down the country. So we have to take all these things into consideration, and I think they've done a very good job trying to balance the budget. So I thank them all for working so hard.
Thank you very much. David.
Yeah, I have to respond to that. I mean, first of all, I made it quite clear at the very beginning, this is not a criticism of the officers. The officers did not vote for the budget. The executive members presented the budget and the Labour councillors supported it. They put the budget together. They are responsible for it. Now, just to at the one huge item that I mentioned, which is the salary increases for staff. No one expected to get away with a 2% salary increase. The Fire Authority put in 4%. One of our neighbouring authorities put in 5%. Luton put into the budget 2%. Completely unrealistic. There's no way anybody expected to get away with 2% staff salary increase. That on its own accounts for £4 million of the overspend.
Thank you, David. Any other comments, queries? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things, first I'd like to clarify that the Fire Authority initially didn't put for 4%. I was there in the meeting. We initially set up 2%, and then later stage, when we see that the 2% is not enough, we do increase it into the 4%, which they're still obviously having some sort of dispute. Other thing that I understand that this budget is presented by the Labour Council. But obviously, this is presented by and prepared by the officers. So we have to trust their expertise. Whatever they do, the job, we cannot be blamed. Us, the Labour Council, giving some wrong figures, which is not fair, which is unfair. And as Councillor Hossain already explained, that this is unpredictable and unprecedented situation that we cannot predict few months later. So it was a well done job by the officer. Thank you. I would like to say thank you to the all who done very good job.
Thank you. Who are we having first? Sorry? Dev.
Okay, thanks very much. So thanks for those questions, Councillor Frank. I would like to put from officer's point of view. So I always say the budget is not an exact science, so it's basically an art. It's very difficult to predict. There might be areas where, as officers, in our assumption, we get it wrong. If we get a budget absolutely on the spot, probably I'll be playing the national lottery. So if I'm lucky. In terms of the employee costs, fair point from Councillor Frank. But I think we have to think at the time when the budget was put together, that was December time. At that time, the focus from Office of Budget Responsibility was inflation will come down. And that's the main reason the government allowed council to increase council tax by 2% and precept by 1%. So why 2%? Because that government was expecting inflation in the region of 2%. So government clearly was saying you can't increase your council tax by more than 2%. And our cost is linked with the income we generate as well. So there's a direct correlation here. Because if you raise council by 2% and you put in your budget 6 or 7% of employee costs, you have to look at affordability. And at that time, there was negotiation going on with the National Joint Council in order to discuss about what is going to be the final settlement. So it was very difficult to budget anything above what Government Office of Budget Responsibility was giving information. So council tax 2% because expecting inflation to be in the region of 2%. But now we know that, as Councillor Hussain mentioned, is 10. National living wage is 10. So next year you will see in the presentation we are making a additional allowance for additional pay award. And that's one of the reasons which, when we set the budget, we set aside 5 million. So it's not that we, rather than increase the baseline, because when you increase the baseline budget, is very difficult to roll back. So when we know there are some uncertainties or risks around, we try to put. So we set aside 5 million of contingency. And on top of that, we have general contingency of 2.2 million. So when you look at those two figures come to 7.5 million. So when you look at the budget in the round, looking at the risks and the additional pressures, but at the same time, when you look at the pension, I'll come to the pension. If we prepare a budget on all the very pessimistic, then the gap it will create, then we'll have to start to look at sort of how we are going to close that gap. So we take a view, some of the things might be in our favor upside, some of the downside. So the pension is a typical example. So if I look at employee costs, there is a downside of 6%, so 4 million, there's an upside of 3 million in the pension. So if we take all the risks like it's going to crystallize and don't anticipate that there might be some upside, then we end up with a much bigger gap. And that's why the budget is how we balance those. So if you look at 23-24, what is the employee net is 4 million negative, but there's 3 million positive on the pension. So and that's what I'm trying to say. In terms of 2-3 million order of magnitude, these are the headroom which will work within. Coming back to the point about the gap, I agree with Councillor Frank, is the net. I've mentioned the net, but I've clearly mentioned there are sort of reserves and everything. And when I will go through the presentation for 23-24, I will go further into how we are going to manage those pressures. But when we look at the autumn statement, the government has acknowledged that in 23-24, the settlement which we receive is not enough. And that has been acknowledged in the autumn statement, and the government has provided additional funding to address those inflation pressures. But unfortunately, those funding come from 23-24, and we can't put it in 2022-23 this year. So that's why there's a gap this year, but there's more money which government has provided. So coming back to the other point which Councillor made about the actuary, the actuarial valuation is, Councillor Young sits in the pension committee and knows that every year the deficit goes up. I have been working local government for years now. The first time the deficit has reduced. So still the pension fund is in deficit. So still our contribution to the pension is significant, but the deficit has reduced. So when we make a pension contribution, we pay for the what called the service cost, which is the existing staff, but then the deficit which has accrued over the years. So we pay a fixed sum for that deficit. But now actually you're saying, but your deficit has reduced. So this means the contribution you have made, you don't have to make the same level of contribution, reduced level of contribution. And the main reason for that is, just picking up from Councillor Hussain, the interest has gone up, but there is an upside. As a benefit to the interest, because what happened here is the gilt, which is the rate at which the government borrows money, so that has gone up. When that goes up, it has a positive impact on the pension fund, because the pension fund can generate more income, because when they invest in government bond, and then the way they, what they call term discount, they value the liability. When there's increase in the cost of borrowing, the liability shrinks. So you have it too, upside in the income and the liability is shrinking, and that's what has caused this upside. We take that upside, and that's what we are reflecting in 22-23, and you will see in 23-24. So all the points Councillor Frank made, absolutely valid points, but I said with reason they are reason why some of the things were done. And order of magnitude, when talking about a gross budget of 500 million, plus or minus 2-3 million is that's a tolerable figure which we have to. But it's how we manage those upside and downside. And then the other thing is in the pandemic, still now we are coming out of the pandemic. So we at the budget, when we prepare the budget, we are thinking, okay, but then we started to go in this cost of living. So the income, we are going to look at it, and you will see when I present, there's still a challenge to raise those income, parking income, licensing income, if the economy slows down. So I think we're thinking after the pandemic, we are going to have an upside. So we're not trying to say, okay, the worst is going to happen in income. We're saying probably we'll be reaching the pre-pandemic level soon. But now with what is happening now is still we are having sort of shortfall in income in terms of parking, licensing, and other income. So I think we'll keep an eye, and I think with all the challenge from members as well, we will try to get the budget as close as possible, but still a challenge, especially now. It's very difficult. I'm sure you've seen over the last 2 months, it has been interest rate has going up and down, and inflation going up and down, and we don't know the next 6 months what it will be. So it's very uncertain time to prepare a budget. But the final thing which I would say, the level of forecast overspend, a lot of councils are in the similar position, if not most. And you will see the level of overspend, some 15, 20, 30, 70, 80 million. These are some sort of figures you will see any local government magazine or the papers. And I really feel for Croydon, they've issued the third section 114. So a lot of council are in quite difficult sort of sense. But when I will take you through the 23-24 budget, you will see there has been an acknowledgement, and autumn statement has provided, especially for social care, a significant amount of funding, but that can't be used for 23-24, 22-23. But thanks. I hope that is helpful, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Devin. That was, I think, well put together. Rob?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think my colleagues have said a lot, what it needs to be said. You know, what we've gone through since the last 12 years as a council is absolutely amazing, in all fairness, and what we've gone through, the austerity programme, the COVID, now we hit inflation, cost of living, energy. This is amazing what we've got to this point. It's been tough the last 12 years, and now we have a government that doesn't want to fund councils. That's the bulk of the problem we are here today. We have a government that does not want to fund councils in the right funding they should have. Luton Borough Council should be a London borough. It should be funded as a London borough. We have the same problems as a London borough, and we are fighting to get that funding as a London borough. This is the same problems. You go down the town hall box steps every night, you will see families coming with their suitcases, homeless. We have to deal with that. We have to deal with that. We see it every night. You see 70, 80 people being put in temporary accommodation. That is a cost to the council. It's a cost to the council. This is what we're up against the whole time. We are a London borough. So if the government needs to decide an allocation of proper funding for the councils, and should make sure the Luton Borough Council are top of the list for that allocation of funding. And if the opposition want to criticise this budget or last year's budget, come forward with your own. Give it to Dev. They'll gladly look through it. Come forward. Just sit there, criticise all the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. David?
Yeah, just one quick response to that, and then I'd like to formally move something, if you don't mind, Chair. We're constantly criticised for not coming forward with our own budget. And I'm sure Rob knows perfectly well that we can't. We're not allowed to do that. The law says the budget must come to full council as a recommendation from the executive. We can't put forward an alternative budget. Okay, I would actually like to formally move that we thank the officers for a comprehensive report on an extremely complicated and constantly changing financial situation.
I think we've had a reasonable discussion on it, and I think I'll draw that to a conclusion. I think Rob wants to say something, and make it short.
Very shortly, the legislation does state you can come through with an alternative budget. I've checked it. You are able to. You just choose not to.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Now, David, you've got I think we've had enough comments and everything, so you've got a resolution.
Yeah, I move that the officers be thanked for a comprehensive report on a complex and constantly changing financial situation.
I think that goes through with everybody. And that comes to recommendations. We have to examine the Q2 forecast, which we have done. and advise on or make any recommendation on matters arising from the report. We just accept it, or is there any kind of amendments?
Personally, I don't feel the need to make any recommendation.
Is that agreed with all the committee? Thank you very much. So we just accept the recommendation to go through to the executive? That one?
Thank you, Chair. And thanks, Councillor Frank, for your nice, kind words. Thanking the officers for the work we've done. I'll pass that to finance officers and the council officers. Tax-based report, that is something which will have to set the tax base for 23-24, and this will form the basis of the council tax when we set the council tax increase. So every year we have to revise the council tax base based on number of empty homes or discounts or new build. On this one, it's a good news, because you will see, if I take you to the page 11/39, the tax base for 22-23, you will see at the bottom of the page, which is the first line in the box. For 22-23, the tax base was 52,738. What does that mean? Is we always convert the tax base into band D. So band D properties mean an average. So we have band A, band B, band C, and overall our tax base is low compared to other neighboring authorities, because we've got quite a lot of properties. 80% of properties are between band A, B, and C. So they attract a lower council tax, whereas property above band D, E, F, they've got a higher sort of council tax. So if you look at page 11 of 39, so the table below, the estimate based on the October figures is for the tax base revised to 54,284. And that equates to an increase in tax base by 1546. And that's basically, if you compare, you will see when I will take you through the budget slides for 23-24, equates to nearly 3 million of additional council tax income. And the main reason for that is there's an increase in the new build, which is on 0.6, but at the same time, there has been a reduction in the council tax support scheme, because at that time, we expected the COVID will last a bit longer, and then at the budget preparation, we expected that more people will be eligible for council tax support, but we've seen that recently the unemployment has been low, so people are going on universal credit and less people were claiming council tax support. So that has brought another big upside. So that's, I would say, as paragraph 2 says, we are required to determine the tax base by 31st of January. So that is coming to FRG, and there will be a report will be prepared and presented to January executive meeting. And this tax base will be used to set our council tax, and this will show the council tax requirement, i.e. how much council tax we expect to raise. And one point I would make, Chair, here is still come back to how we look at our estimate and forecast. So you will see on page 13, you've got Appendix A, and you will see we are expecting to collect 95%. And this year, the budget was based on 96. So to be a bit cautious, we are expecting, because of the recession, the amount we are going to collect will be slightly lower. So in terms of our budget, we try to be cautious where we can. So as I said, it's not we don't get everything right. So we acknowledge that because of the potential sort of recession, there is 5% loss, and that's before the 5% loss predicted. The tax base is 57, and then 95% of 57 is 54. And in practice, what happens if during the year there is more empty homes or discount or council tax support, then we revise that and it results into a surplus or deficit, but that surplus or deficit will have an impact on 24-25. And that's why you will see sometimes I refer to collection fund surplus deficit. And I'm quite happy to take any questions, Chair.
David?
Yeah, only one. This is largely a statistical exercise, isn't it? The room for discretion is tiny. Probably the biggest area of discretion is in setting the collection rate. And I guess 95% is about somewhere near. And the question is, the premium for homes that have been empty for more than 10 years. I always get confused with this because there are several ways of interpreting the word premium. Does this mean the 300% premium is in addition to the 100% that they would have to pay anyway? So they pay 400%? Or in fact is the total that the owners have to pay 300%? This is important given that there are 248 homes in the town which had been empty for more than 10 years. And I'm not a matter for this committee to deal with, but I would have thought someone should be looking at a better way of using those empty homes and getting hands on them and giving them to tenancies to people who need them. Anyway, so is it 300% or 400% is the question, please?
I'll take this question and I'll come back on this one. Yeah. So yeah, and in terms of empty homes, whether we can do something, we have to explore that. You're absolutely right. And if there is a way where some of the properties we can purchase and again compulsory purchase order and use them for other purposes, that's something which we have to explore.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who's confused by the use of the word premium.
Confused as well.
Any more questions, queries, comments? So we accept on page 9, the recommendations. Is that fine with everybody? Thank you. That's. Oh yes, item 11. Progress on achieving the auditor's sign-offs for 2018-19 accounts. I think that's over to you, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think we have in audit committee FRG going through that quite a lot of the main issue, as I've mentioned last time, was to do with the valuation. And as I've mentioned, the valuation has gone up for the airport from $500 million to 1.4 billion. Now, this is a big figure, and if we are including in 18-19, and as mentioned, the auditors quite rightly wanted 3 years full valuation and the latest guidance and everything, and that was done by Deloitte. And the reason why 3 years valuation, because 18-19 account, if we have to do 18-19 and we adjust those, then the impact has on what we call prior adjustment 17-18 and 16-17. That's why the 18-19 accounts requires 3 years full valuation. That was done. We've already decided to. Deloitte took a bit longer because of, I think it's not just us, the audit firm was struggling as well in terms of resources. Wherever we discuss they're struggling. So they had to go through their process, do it, and they've got a sort of quality assurance process, review and get clearance and everything. Because you're talking about an airport valuation of 1.4 billion. So 10% is 140 million. So that was sent. Deloitte EY came back with some technical queries, which we forwarded to Deloitte, and I chased it today as well. So hopefully that was the main issue. And when you do the valuation, then there's something which is called deferred tax. So I don't want to be technical, but that as well, PricewaterhouseCoopers is doing the deferred tax computation. So those were two significant items, and we required sort of expert advice to do those valuation. That's done. It with question is back with Deloitte now, but the full valuation report has been submitted to EY. And then last time we've mentioned there was some technical presentational things in the accounts. That's we've got support from Deloitte. That has been done, and the account was sent. EY came with from some more queries. We've gone through that, and I think it went on Monday or Tuesday. So we'll be discussing with EY, and we'll be bringing Deloitte and EY technical team on those valuation to resolve those few issues which are outstanding. I'm pushing. I'm sure it's in everybody's interest, Deloitte and Lal and everybody's, to get this resolved. But I think we've made significant. Last time I had a chat with Janet, we made significant progress in terms of special valuation, which is the key one. There was one or two issues I'm sure members would remember. Is something to do with infrastructure asset, is to do with highways. But I've said this very much was in government what sort of dispensation. So government has come with legislation and guidance to say 3 years all local government won't have to go and do a specific valuation of highways. So that cleared. The pension thing was a note that's cleared. And basically, I think we've made significant progress from what we met last time. If I get an answer from Deloitte when they will be able to clear the final queries and bring EY, so I should be able in 2 weeks' time send an email to say, okay, here is a more or less a sort of firm deadline when we are going to sign these accounts.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions, David?
Well, yeah, only question for you, Chair, if you don't mind. Could we have this as a standard item on every agenda until such time as the accounts are signed off and the auditor's letter has been received?
I think we could have that done. And also, I mean, Deb, we also need to know whether that will increase the progress of the 1920 and the 2021 accounts. It doesn't look very good when we go back to 2018-19 in the public side. It's terrible that we haven't. I know it's not your problem, but in the public side, they think something is wrong.
Yeah.
Because they're not being signed off.
Yeah. So as I said, Chair, when you look at the council accounts, that's where we set our council tax and manage our budget. It's auditors hasn't got any concern. So when you look at our accounts and our budget, which we base on the council figures, auditors, yeah, the main here is the group. And the group is when being the value of the airport, and that's positive because it's going up by £1 billion. Yeah. If the auditors had concern about the council accounts, the council figures, then I'll be, as a section, your section, I'll say quite worried because we are planning our budget and the accounts if auditors have concern. So the council accounts, no, it's clear. The infrastructure, it was a technical thing. All council are facing that, and government has acknowledged and SIFA has come with guidance. But the council accounts auditors have audited and they've said, yeah. But coming back to your point, absolutely right. But if this valuation thing is sorted, then the 1920 accounts and everything is much easier because EY has done significant progress in 1920 audit, and so far we haven't had any sort of significant issues raised by EY. So once this is done, then it's much easier to just do a valuation for 1920 and 2021 and put those figures in the group accounts. So just to say, give reassurance to members, the council accounts is no issues. Yeah. So the taxpayers should be reassured that the tax which we are raising and all the budget which was being set, the council figures but hasn't got any concern on those accounts. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dev. That's very reassuring. Any other questions, queries from anybody? Thank you very much. We have to note the report, I presume that's fine with everybody. And now we come to the work programme. Who's dealing with that?
Chair, the work programme is as per the papers. Up to members to who would have read those to come up with any amendments if required. And also the forward plan, the executive forward plan is there for you to see if there was anything that you needed to add to the work programme.
I think we discussed at the last meeting, that we may need an additional. We don't need one now, okay, which is pleasing to most people. The work programme on the 10th of January looks fairly substantial. I hope we will have enough time. Matt, do you think? That's fine. And then, of course, the one on the 26th of January is basically the budget. And then we go into the normal various items beginning of March. So has anybody got any additional things they would like to see for this year?
Chair, do you want me to add the standing item on the oral update on the sign-off?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, normally Deborah would kind of be able to give a very short report. I don't think it will be very long, so I think we can include it in the 10th of January and also in subsequent ones until we get a feeling that the council's budgets are being, not the budgets, the council accounts have been signed off in a normal fashion fairly quickly. And then there was the work programme for, is that 22-23?
So these are the items for future work programme, dates to be allocated to
Okay.
those.
So has anybody got anything they would like to put on that list in addition to what we normally have as standing items? Thank you very much. So we approve the works programme as reported on item 2. Is that fine with everybody? Good. Now we have a private session.
Item 13. You agree to go into private?
Yeah, okay, yeah. Item 13 is now we go into private. Anybody not in the public should go, and going into private, I presume everybody's agreed with that.